My best friend said I was too successful to invite. Then I exposed the lie that destroyed our whole group. When I asked about the birthday party I wasn't invited to, my best friend said, "Your presence makes everyone depressed." She said it casually like she was explaining why she didn't buy generic cereal while our entire friend group from college was posting photos from a weekend trip I knew nothing about. It's uncomfortable for them when you're around your promotion, your house, your husband's business. It reminds everyone else they're struggling. Jessica had been my best friend for 15 years and she decided I was too successful to include. I didn't even know there was a reunion. She shrugged while sipping the coffee I'd bought because she'd forgotten her wallet again. It wasn't really planned. We just didn't invite you and then it happened. But I'd seen the group chat messages that Rachel had accidentally included me in before removing me. 3 months of planning, hotel bookings, coordinated flights, restaurant reservations. You planned for 3 months, Jessica. She rolled her eyes. Fine, we planned it, but only because Mina said she wouldn't come if you were there. She's going through a divorce and seeing your perfect marriage would hurt her. Mina's divorce was because she'd cheated with 3 different men, but apparently my stable relationship was the problem. And Katie? Jessica laughed. Katie's been unemployed for a year. You talking about your promotion to director would make her feel worthless. I'd never talked about my promotion. They'd asked and I'd answered honestly. What about Lauren? She has a great job. Jessica's face changed. Lauren specifically requested you not come. She said, "You make everything about yourself." That didn't make sense. I barely talked at our gatherings because Jessica usually dominated conversations. When have I ever made things about myself? Jessica pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Remember when Katie announced she was pregnant? You said congratulations and asked about her due date. Classic attention-seeking behavior. You should have just said congrats and stopped talking. I stared at her. Asking about a due date is attention-seeking. She nodded seriously. You were centering yourself in her moment by asking questions. And when Mina got engaged, you asked to see the ring, obviously trying to compare it to yours. My ring was my grandmother's simple band. Mina's was a massive diamond. I was being polite. Jessica kept scrolling. Oh, here's another one. When Rachel's dad died, you offered to help with funeral arrangements, trying to take control and be the hero. Rachel had asked me to help because I'd handled my mother's funeral the year before. She literally asked me to help. Jessica put her phone down, annoyed. You don't get it. Your helpfulness makes others feel inadequate. Your success makes them feel like failures. Your stability makes them feel broken. She leaned forward. I've been protecting you by keeping you away. They all complain about you constantly. That hurt more than the exclusion. They complain about me. Jessica nodded eagerly constantly. Lauren says you dress too nicely for casual lunches. Katie thinks you offer to pay too often, like you're showing off. Mina believes you stay thin just to make her feel bad about her weight. None of this was true. I wore normal clothes. I offered to pay because I knew they were struggling. I stayed healthy because diabetes ran in my family. So you all just talk about me behind my back. Jessica smiled. Not all. I defend you sometimes. Say you can't help being successful. That some people are just lucky in life. Lucky like I hadn't worked nights for my degree. Like I hadn't spent years in therapy after my mother's death. Like my marriage wasn't work every single day. What about you, Jessica? Do you think I'm too successful to be around? She hesitated, then nodded. Honestly, yes. When we're together, people compare us. You with your perfect life and me still renting and single. It's exhausting being the unsuccessful friend. That's when I noticed something. Where did you get that bracelet? It was new and expensive looking. Jessica touched it nervously. Oh, this gift from the group. They pulled money for my birthday. My birthday had passed 2 months ago without any of them acknowledging it. When was your birthday? She looked confused. April, you know that. You usually make a big deal about it. I did know that. Her birthday was in April, 4 months away. Jessica, it's December. Your birthday isn't for 4 months. She went red. Early birthday gift. They wanted to celebrate early, but I already knew. They'd been taking turns buying her things. I'd seen the receipts she'd left at my house. Designer purse from Lauren. Spa weekend from Katie. Concert tickets from Mina. You told them I was rich and made them feel bad so they'd buy you things to make themselves feel equal to me. Jessica's face went white. That's ridiculous. But it wasn't. She'd done this before in high school. Created a division to get attention and gifts. Show me the messages where they complain about me. She pulled her phone back. That's private. I grabbed my own phone and called Rachel. Hey, Rachel. It's me. Jessica just told me everyone hates me for being successful. Is that true? Rachel was quiet, then exploded. What? Jessica told us you thought we were all pathetic losers. She said, you called us failures and refused to hang out with poor people. I held the phone away from my ear for a second because Rachel was talking so fast I could barely understand her words. My brain felt like it was trying to catch up with what she was saying while also watching Jessica go completely still across from me at the coffee shop table. Rachel kept going on about how Jessica told everyone I said they were all losers who couldn't afford to be around me anymore. She said Jessica showed them text messages where I supposedly called Katie's baby announcement trashy and said Mina deserved her divorce for being fat and having no self-control. None of that was true and I'd never said anything even close to those words. But Rachel believed it because Jessica had proof. I looked at Jessica and her face had gone from red to completely white like all the blood just drained out. She knew exactly what was happening right now as her whole plan started falling apart in real time. I reached across the table and hit the speaker button on my phone so Jessica could hear every single word Rachel was saying. Rachel's voice filled the space between us talking about how Jessica sent screenshots of conversations that I supposedly had with her where I complained about having to spend time with poor people. She said Jessica told them I thought their problems were pathetic and that I only kept them around to feel better about myself. Rachel sounded so angry her voice was shaking as she listed more things Jessica claimed I said, including that Katie getting pregnant while unemployed was the most irresponsible thing she'd ever seen, and that Mina's marriage failed because she had no self-respect. Jessica tried to stand up and grab her purse, but I moved faster and blocked the exit of the coffee shop. Other people were staring at us, but I didn't care anymore. I told Jessica we were finishing this conversation right here and right now, and she wasn't leaving until Rachel heard the truth directly from her. Rachel didn't wait for Jessica to say anything before she started conference calling people. Within 30 seconds, Katie's voice came through the phone asking what was going on and why Rachel sounded so upset. Then Mina joined and suddenly there were 4 of us on the call with Jessica sitting there trapped at the table looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Rachel immediately asked Katie if I'd ever said anything bad about her pregnancy, and Katie got quiet before saying no, but Jessica told her I did. Katie's voice started breaking as she explained that Jessica showed her messages where I supposedly called her pregnancy announcement attention-seeking and said she was trying to steal focus from people with real accomplishments. Mina jumped in saying Jessica told her I made comments about her weight gain during the divorce and said her marriage ended because she couldn't control herself around food or men. All 3 of them started talking over each other, comparing the different lies Jessica told each person, and realizing none of it matched up. Jessica had told each of them completely different stories about what the others said, and now they were figuring out she'd been playing them all against each other. Katie started crying on the phone, saying she'd been avoiding me for 8 months because she thought I looked down on her for getting pregnant without a stable job. She said every time she saw my social media posts about work, she felt sick thinking about how I judged her for her choices. Nina admitted she stopped responding to my texts after Jessica told her I said the divorce was predictable for someone with her lifestyle. Rachel kept asking Jessica why she would do this, but Jessica just sat there staring at the table not saying anything. Then Lauren's voice came through the phone without any warning and she sounded confused asking what was happening and why everyone was so upset. Rachel explained the whole situation in about 2 minutes and Lauren went completely silent before saying that made no sense because she never requested I be excluded from anything. Lauren said she'd been asking Jessica for months why I wasn't coming to group events anymore. And Jessica always had an excuse. Sometimes Jessica said I was too busy with my director job to waste time with old friends. And other times she said I told her directly that I'd outgrown everyone. Lauren said Jessica even showed her text messages where I supposedly said hanging out with them was boring now that I had more successful friends through work. She believed it because the messages looked real with my name and profile picture and everything. But now Lauren was saying those had to be fake because she remembered asking Jessica why I would say those things when it didn't sound like me at all. Jessica had told her that success changes people and sometimes your oldest friends become your biggest critics when you're struggling. Lauren said she felt stupid for believing it, but Jessica was convincing and the screenshots looked legitimate. I finally looked down at the expensive bracelet on Jessica's wrist and asked her to show me the group chat where everyone planned her birthday gift together. She pulled her phone close to her chest and said it was private, but I was already reaching across the table. She tried to grab it back, but I was faster and got my hands on it first. I unlocked it because I knew her password from all the times she'd asked me to check her messages when she was driving. I found the thread about her birthday and started scrolling through it. There was no group discussion at all about pooling money for a gift. Instead, there were separate conversations with each person where Jessica told them the others were organizing something and asking if they wanted to contribute. Katie thought she was adding money to a group gift. Lauren believed she was splitting costs with everyone else. Mina said yes to contributing because Jessica made it sound like it was already planned. But the truth was each of them bought Jessica something completely separate and Jessica never told any of them that the others were doing the same thing. She'd collected gifts from everyone by making each person think it was a group effort when really she was manipulating them individually. The next 2 days I had Rachel and Katie and Mina and Lauren over to my house one at a time to talk through everything privately. Rachel came first and we sat in my kitchen for 3 hours going through every conversation she could remember having with Jessica about me. She said, Jessica always brought me up in a way that made it seem like she was defending me, but actually planted seeds of doubt. Like, she'd say things like, I can't help that I'm successful, or, I don't mean to make you feel bad about money. Rachel said those comments made her start questioning whether I actually looked down on her, even though I'd never said anything directly. She remembered times when Jessica would mention my promotion right after Rachel talked about struggling at work or bring up my house when Rachel complained about her apartment. It always felt like Jessica was being supportive, but really she was making Rachel compare herself to me constantly. Katie came over next and brought her laptop with all her banking records pulled up. She showed me every purchase she'd made for Jessica over the past year, and the total came to over $3,000. The spa weekend cost $800, and Katie paid for the whole thing because Jessica said everyone else already contributed their share. The designer purse was $1,200, and Jessica told Katie it was on sale, but really it was full price. Concert tickets were $300 each, and Jessica said she'd pay Katie back after her next paycheck, but never did. Then there were all the dinners where Jessica forgot her wallet and Katie covered the bill. Katie said she never thought much about it because Jessica always had a story about unexpected expenses or delayed payments at work. But now looking at everything together, it was obvious Jessica had been taking advantage of her guilt about coming from a wealthy family. Every time Katie felt bad about having money, Jessica was right there with an emergency that needed financial help. Mina showed up with Rachel and they'd already been comparing notes before they got to my house. They both pulled up their bank statements on their phones and found the same pattern Katie discovered. Mina had spent almost $2,000 on Jessica in the past year through gifts and loans that never got repaid. Rachel was around $1,500 between birthday presents and covering Jessica's share of group dinners and lending money for car repairs that may or may not have actually happened. They said Jessica always timed her request perfectly right after they got paid or received bonuses. She'd mention needing something right when they had extra money and make it seem casual, like she wasn't really asking, but just sharing what was going on in her life. Then they'd offer to help because that's what friends do. And Jessica would accept while promising to pay them back soon. But soon never came. And Jessica always had another emergency before she could repay the previous one. Lauren was the last person to come over and she brought her boyfriend who works in tech. He said he could help us document everything properly if we wanted to have proof of what Jessica did. He showed us how to take screenshots of conversations with timestamps still visible and how to export banking records in a format that would preserve all the metadata. While we were organizing everything into folders on my laptop, Rachel suddenly remembered something from college. She said Jessica did something similar in our dorm sophomore year when she created drama between roommates by telling each person different stories about what the others said. Rachel remembered Jessica positioned herself as the peacemaker trying to help everyone get along, but really she was the one stirring up all the conflict in the first place. Back then, it seemed like Jessica was just bad at communication. But now, Rachel realized it was the exact same pattern she'd been using on us for the past year. 2 days after we finished organizing all the evidence, I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Hadley Rogers, who I didn't know. She said she saw Jessica's social media posts about losing her friend group, and it triggered memories of something that happened to her 7 years ago. Hadley explained she was in Jessica's high school friend group and watched Jessica use identical tactics to create divisions between friends while collecting gifts and money by playing the victim. She sent me screenshots of old group chats from 2016 that showed Jessica telling different people different lies about what others said. The messages were almost word for word the same things Jessica told us, including claims that successful friends look down on struggling ones. People with money made others feel worthless just by existing. Hadley said their whole friend group fell apart after 2 years of Jessica's manipulation. And by the time they figured out what was happening, Jessica had already moved on to college where she met us. She said she wished someone had warned her back then and that's why she was reaching out now. I spent the rest of the day forwarding Hadley's screenshots to everyone in our group. By evening, we scheduled a video call for the next night so we could all talk together about what to do next. I barely slept that night thinking about Jessica doing this exact same thing to new people while we sat here with all this proof. The next evening, I logged into the video call early and watched everyone else join one by one. Rachel appeared first looking tired, then Katie, who'd been crying, then Mina, who seemed angry, and finally Lauren, who had her boyfriend there with her for support. Katie started talking as soon as everyone was on. She wanted to post everything on social media immediately with screenshots and receipts so other people would know what Jessica did. She pulled up a draft post she'd already written that named Jessica directly and included photos of the fake text messages and banking records. Mina cut her off before she could read the whole thing. She said posting publicly would make us look like we were just bitter ex-friend trying to get revenge and people would side with Jessica because she was good at playing victim. Mina pointed out that Jessica already had sympathy from strangers on her social media and adding our accusations would just give her more attention. Lauren suggested we forget about warning other people and just focus on confronting Jessica privately to get our money back. She said we could meet with Jessica together and show her all the evidence and demand she pay back every dollar she owed us. Rachel immediately disagreed and said confronting Jessica was pointless because she would just lie more or cry or make excuses like she always did. Rachel thought we should cut Jessica off completely and move on with our lives without wasting more energy on someone who clearly didn't care about us. I sat there listening to everyone argue and felt torn between all their ideas. Part of me wanted justice and wanted Jessica exposed so she couldn't hurt anyone else, but another part of me just wanted this whole situation to be over so I could stop thinking about it every single day. We argued back and forth for almost an hour without reaching any decision. Katie kept insisting we had a responsibility to warn people while Rachel kept saying Jessica wasn't worth our time anymore. Lauren tried to find middle ground by suggesting we at least try to get our money back before doing anything else. Mina worried that any action we took would backfire and make us look bad instead of Jessica. I finally said we should sleep on it and talk again in a few days after everyone had time to think clearly. We ended the call without any plan at all. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Katie. Jessica had sent her a long message overnight apologizing for everything and blaming her behavior on depression. Katie forwarded me the message and it was full of Jessica talking about how she'd been struggling with mental health for years and hadn't gotten help because she was ashamed. She promised Katie she was going to start therapy immediately and said the manipulation came from a place of deep pain rather than malice. The message ended with Jessica begging Katie not to hate her and saying she understood if Katie never wanted to speak to her again, but she needed Katie to know she was truly sorry. I called Mina to ask if she'd heard from Jessica, too, and Mina said yes. Jessica sent her a completely different message about childhood trauma and how growing up poor made her act out in toxic ways around successful people. Jessica told Mina she was working on understanding her triggers and learning healthier coping methods. Rachel got a message about how Jessica had always felt inferior to smart women and that insecurity made her lash out. Lauren's message said Jessica was jealous of successful career women because she felt like a failure in comparison. My email from Jessica was the longest of all and went into detail about how my perfect life triggered something broken inside her that made her want to tear me down. Every single apology was different and specifically designed to appeal to that person's sympathies. Jessica knew Katie would respond to mental health struggles because Katie had been open about her own anxiety. She knew Mina would understand childhood trauma because Mina talked about her difficult upbringing. She targeted Rachel's empathy for people with low self-esteem and Lauren's understanding of workplace jealousy. My email focused on how intimidating my success was because Jessica knew I'd feel guilty about making her feel bad. I forwarded all the messages to everyone else and we realized Jessica was still manipulating us even while apologizing. That evening, my husband came home from work and sat down next to me on the couch with a serious expression. He said he needed to tell me something he'd been keeping quiet because he didn't want to worry me. But now he realized it was important. Back in September, Jessica had called him out of nowhere, claiming she was concerned about my mental health. She told him I seemed stressed from work and asked if I was okay. She suggested I might be having some kind of breakdown from the pressure of my promotion and said the friend group was worried, but didn't want to upset me by asking directly. My husband said he didn't mention it at the time because he figured Jessica was just being a caring friend, and he didn't see any signs I was struggling. But now, he understood Jessica was testing whether she could manipulate him, too, and plant seeds of doubt about my stability in his mind. If he'd believed her concerns, he might have started watching me differently or questioning my judgment about the friend group situation. I felt sick realizing how far Jessica's manipulation had reached. She didn't just target my friends. She tried to turn my own husband against me by making him think I was mentally unstable. If her plan had worked, he might have dismissed everything I said about her lies as paranoia or stress. The fact that she'd been planning this for months while pretending to be my best friend made everything worse. I wondered how many other people in my life she'd contacted with fake concerns or twisted stories. The next day, Lauren suggested we create a detailed record of everything Jessica had taken from us. She set up a shared spreadsheet, and we all started adding entries with dates, amounts, and descriptions. Katie went first and added the spa weekend that cost $800, the designer purse that was $1,200, concert tickets for 300 and dozens of dinners and coffee meetups where she paid because Jessica never had her wallet. Lauren added her contributions, including a weekend trip Jessica claimed she needed for mental health that cost $1,000 and regular loans for rent that never got repaid. Mina listed gifts for Jessica's apartment, clothes Jessica borrowed and never returned, and money for car repairs that probably never happened. Rachel documented plane tickets she'd bought for Jessica to visit her family, and numerous small loans that added up to over $2,000. I added my own entries and watched the total climb. $300 for the bracelet I saw her wearing that she claimed was from the group, $500 for an emergency root canal that I later found out never happened. $400 for new tires after Jessica said her car failed inspection. $600 for various emergencies over the past year that always came right before I got paid. Smaller amounts for dinners, coffee, groceries, gas money, parking fees. When we finished adding everything, the total came to $15,347 across all 5 of us over just 18 months. Katie's total was the highest at $4,200 because Jessica knew Katie came from wealth and felt guilty about having money when others struggled. Mine was second at $3,100 because Jessica frequently came to me with emergencies knowing I had stable income and would help. Looking at the spreadsheet made everything feel more real and more horrible. Jessica had systematically extracted thousands of dollars from us while making us feel like we were the problem. She turned our kindness and generosity into weapons against us by making us feel guilty for having things she didn't. Every time we helped her, we were actually feeding her manipulation and encouraging her to keep going. 2 days later, I got a Facebook message from someone named Brendan Rogers, who I didn't know. He said he was Hadley's brother and he'd found something disturbing he thought I should see. He sent me screenshots from a group chat he discovered through a mutual friend. The chat was between Jessica and 3 women from her yoga studio, and the messages went back 3 months. Jessica was telling them about her toxic former friends who'd abandoned her for being poor and not successful enough. She described us as shallow people who only cared about money and status and said we'd cut her off when she couldn't afford to keep up with our expensive lifestyles. The yoga studio women were responding with sympathy and support and talking about how they'd never treat a friend that way. I scrolled through the messages and saw Jessica using the exact same tactics she'd used on us. She was creating a narrative where she was the victim of cruel, successful people who looked down on her. She mentioned specific things about her new friends' lives and positioned herself as less fortunate in comparison. One woman had recently gotten engaged and Jessica made comments about how she'd probably never find love because she didn't have the right job or apartment to attract quality men. Another woman had just bought a house and Jessica talked about how she'd be renting forever because she couldn't catch a break. The third woman had gotten a promotion and Jessica said she was happy for her, but also felt like a failure in comparison. The women were already organizing to help Jessica through this difficult time of losing her friend group. They'd planned a girls' night to cheer her up and were discussing pooling money to buy her a gift basket. One of them suggested they all contribute to help Jessica with her rent since she was struggling financially after her friends abandoned her. I could see the whole pattern starting over again with new victims who had no idea what they were getting into. I forwarded the screenshots to the yoga studio women with a simple message explaining the pattern. Within an hour, one of them responded saying she'd noticed Jessica asking to borrow money last week using a similar story about an unexpected car repair. She thanked me for the warning and said she'd share it with the others. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Jessica and a flood of text messages accusing me of ruining her life and trying to sabotage her new friendships. She called me jealous, bitter, and unable to let go of the past. I didn't respond to any of it. My husband read through the messages over my shoulder and pointed out that every single one was designed to make me feel guilty or angry enough to engage. We decided together that I wouldn't reply at all because any response would just give her more material to twist. The coffee shop meeting happened 3 weeks after everything exploded. We picked a neutral location that wasn't anyone's regular spot and made sure we all arrived together so Jessica couldn't corner anyone individually. She showed up 20 minutes late wearing sunglasses inside and carrying a folder of printed documents. Rachel started by laying out the facts calmly, showing Jessica the spreadsheet of documented loans and gifts with dates and amounts. Jessica tried to interrupt multiple times, but we'd agreed beforehand to let one person speak at a time without getting derailed. When Rachel finished, Jessica put her folder on the table and started crying. She talked about growing up poor while her friends had everything, watching people succeed while she struggled, feeling invisible next to women who seemed to have perfect lives. She said seeing my promotion announcement triggered something in her that made her want to tear down what I had because it reminded her of everything she didn't have. The crying seemed genuine, but so had all her previous performances. She admitted she'd been doing versions of this since high school, creating conflict between friends to make herself feel important and in control. She said destroying my friendships made her feel powerful for the first time in years because she could manipulate successful people into doubting themselves. It was validating to hear her confirm everything we'd figured out, but it was also deeply sad because I could see how damaged she was by her own insecurity. She agreed to the repayment plan without argument and said she'd already started looking for a therapist because she knew something was wrong with her. Then she looked directly at me and said she resented all of us for having easier lives, better jobs, stable relationships and financial security while she rented a studio apartment and worked retail at 32. The honesty was brutal, but at least it was real. We established clear boundaries, a payment schedule, and agreed we'd stay in contact only through a group email for payment updates. There was no hug. Goodbye. No promise to stay friends, no attempt to salvage anything. The trust was completely broken, and we all knew it. 2 weeks later, Jessica sent the group email with a receipt showing her first therapy appointment, and a bank transfer confirmation for $500. The email was brief and formal with no personal details or attempts at conversation. Over the next few months, the emails continued in the same style, just payment confirmations and therapy updates with no emotional content. I checked her social media once and saw that her posts had become less frequent, and the yoga studio women had all unfriended her. The repayment plan would take at least 3 years to complete, and we all understood we'd probably never get everything back. But having clear boundaries felt like progress, even if the friendship was gone forever. Our friend group started meeting regularly without Jessica's filter between us. We talked honestly about how we'd let her manipulate us by not communicating directly with each other when problems came up. We admitted that we all had real insecurities Jessica had identified and exploited. Rachel said she sometimes felt boring compared to the rest of us. Mina acknowledged she'd been sensitive about her divorce and didn't want to talk about my marriage because it hurt to see what she'd lost. I recognized that I'd sometimes avoided mentioning my promotion or my house because I worried people would think I was bragging, which made it easier for Jessica to control the narrative about me. We were learning to be direct with each other instead of letting someone else interpret our feelings and intentions. The conversations were uncomfortable but necessary because we'd spent years communicating through Jessica instead of talking to each other directly. 3 months after that initial coffee shop confrontation, everything felt different. We were planning a weekend trip together and actually discussing budgets openly instead of pretending money didn't matter. Nobody was excluded or manipulated. Nobody was lying about what they could afford or making others feel guilty for having more. I still felt sad when I thought about losing a 15-year friendship, but I also understood that friendship had been built on Jessica's lies rather than any genuine connection between us. My relationship with my husband got stronger because the crisis taught us to communicate better about problems instead of hoping they'd resolve themselves. I learned that having success doesn't mean hiding it or apologizing for it.